It's like, I've never seen nothing like it before. How we all were able to just like do this and like conquer this show. That's why I believe in the power of collaboration.
The ability to communicate with other artists about how we want to share ourselves has really, I think, changed my perceptions on what it means to make.
Originally, it was called Windows, and basically the show was about being able to look into the world of other people.
It was conceived on a drive back from Boston. I had just moved into my new apartment, my first apartment, and there's this area outside the building where if you stand out there, you can sort of see into other people's windows. And it really made me think about how we could do a piece about that.
We become so consumed in our own lives, we forget what others are going through. And so being able to look through people's lives and look through those windows and see what really happens behind the curtain is extremely important.
So devised theater is removing the text as the most important element and putting all of the elements of the stage on even playing field. So you're exploring the form potentially before the content or before the character or before whatever the playwright would have given you. So you're not starting with text. So for most of us, if not all performers, this was a very new experience devising anything. And so to just kind of be doing stuff without the script first, I couldn't put the distance between me and the character with a sheet of paper because the paper didn't exist.
The thing that's so wonderful about devising is that it sort of takes away the hierarchy of traditional theater. It allows everyone in the room, despite roles, to have a voice.
One of the reasons that this project, I think, was chosen to be inserted into the season is because it did lend itself to working in COVID. And one of the reasons being that there could be one performer isolated in their own space, and they wouldn't need to be masked. There would be obviously glass, the windows and walls between them and the audience, and so they would be completely contained. So it was really one of the few possibilities that we'd come up with where we could have a live performance in the season.
To not be all creating the same space together, it was like us and our cohort group, was really fascinating. It was a weird balance to find of not being able to see anybody else or feel their energy at all because we were all in completely different spaces. So we all had to sign on to Zoom. We would have our video on facing the inside of the room, turn all of the overhead lights on so that Andy could see as much as he could in, and then would try to play with text and figure out the stuff that we were doing through hearing each other through Zoom.
Let's go check people out. Hey, what's up, boo? No, I just want to make sure that you have as many elements to make your character the best it can be. This is your living room. So there's still more things to come, of course. I'm proud to say that I designed Inheritance. It's so many different elements throughout that show that pinpoint small things for the character to embody. That's all my goal was, to make sure that the character embodied their true form through the environment in which they were in. And so I was working with them in the rehearsal room and then working with them in space, just seeing how they fluctuated, how they did things like specifically with Acadia, how she moved the cards on her table or how she played with the books. It was just small things that I just tapped into for design purposes. It was a lot of different elements that play into those windows.
So when we had this idea for this form of looking into a building, the question, of course, is what building? It needed a place where there could be maybe a smattering of audience, and it needed to be a place where there were actual windows that people could look in. And We felt like it needed to be something that was at least akin to being residential. And Luke Klein, who was one of the performers in the production, said, "What about Brookstown Inn?" It offered a lot of history, and a lot of complicated history. That building has been many things, and that felt right. So as the forms and the content started to emerge, I started to hear a lot of the past about what world has been handed to them. There was also some work about what they were going to hand off. How are they going to leave the world to the next generation?
I think it's about how we find ourselves somehow now responsible for taking care of the world that we have been raised in. And that becomes challenging when the world is literally on fire and feels like everything is burning and breaking.
This word inheritance just kept coming up in my mind. And so I floated it with Eliza and then the group. And then every time someone brought some work in, it's kind of stuck.
The team just brought in so much more to it and brought in all of these issues of the current world that we're still facing despite being indoors. And it sort of became this pressure cooker, to quote Andy.
Our collaboration on that show was so unique. Being able to collaborate with actors and actresses, that was what made me a much better designer, and that's what I'm really proud of.
We didn't really, I don't think, feel it until closing night, but like it truly didn't exist, not even like 8 weeks before. It was such a short time frame, and we put an hour of material together that moved people in some way. That is astonishing to me.
This was the first time in the UNCSA main stage that students had written the play, and they'd only had 6 weeks before we started to have to make decisions and move into production, and that's not long enough to make a play. And so it was really important to me to keep reminding people that this was the beginning stages of something that could grow beyond where it is now.
Finding a way to find connection even in a time when we can't, when we're not able to, and we're all scared, and it's so easy to succumb to fear. But I mean, that's what devising is as a whole. It's just finding a new way to do it. The goal of this piece was to find connectivity within the confines of not having it. And we did that. And I don't know if we'll continue to do it, but we should. We should, just in our everyday lives.